My name is Jessica Turner, and at 34 years old, I never expected to be sitting alone in my Seattle apartment 3 days before Christmas, staring at a legal document demanding I pay $25,000 for a car I'd never driven. The envelope had arrived that morning, crisp white paper with the Whitfield Legal Group logo embossed in the corner. My hands trembled as I read the formal language stating I was responsible for the agreed-upon payment for my sister Amanda's new BMW, a car I hadn't even seen in person. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My tiny studio apartment, usually my sanctuary from the world, suddenly felt like it was closing in on me. Outside my window, Seattle's perpetual December drizzle matched my mood perfectly as I stared at the paper, trying to make sense of it. Family Christmas at my grandmother's estate in Boston had always been the highlight of my year. The massive pine tree in the foyer, the smell of cinnamon and cloves, the laughter echoing through generations of Turners gathered together. But not this year. This year, I wasn't invited. And now, somehow, I was being billed for my sister's luxury car. My phone buzzed with a notification, a picture on Instagram. My parents, my sister Amanda, and her husband Chad, all posing in front of Grandma's tree. Amanda's caption read, "Family is everything. #blessed, #Christmas spirit." I had been erased, and now they wanted my money. They thought excluding me would make me disappear, make me easier to manipulate and control. They had no idea what I was about to do. What happened next would change our family forever. Because they'd made one critical mistake. They thought I was still the same pushover I'd always been. Looking back, I should have seen this coming. The pattern had been there all along, hidden beneath the veneer of family loyalty and sisterly support. I'd spent years being the reliable one, the responsible one, while Amanda floated through life on charm and promises. I'm a marketing manager at Pinnacle Marketing Group. I work 60-hour weeks creating campaigns for clients who barely remember my name. I pay my bills on time. I call my parents every Sunday. I've done everything right, followed every rule. Amanda, 5 years younger than me, has spent her adult life as an aspiring influencer. Her Instagram is filled with carefully curated images of her perfect life, brunches at exclusive restaurants, weekend getaways to Napa Valley, designer clothes she just happened to find at sample sales. The reality, which I knew all too well, was quite different. January 2022 was when the first major red flag appeared. Amanda called me, breathless with excitement about her new business venture, a subscription box service for sustainable beauty products. "It's going to be huge. Jess, investors are already interested, but I need some startup capital right now. Just a small loan until the first round of funding comes through." That small loan was $10,000, nearly all of my emergency savings at the time, but she was my sister, and family helps family. That's what our parents had always taught us. "You'll pay me back, someday," I said as I transferred the money, trying to sound casual while my stomach twisted with anxiety. "Of course, probably within 3 months, 6, tops," Amanda had promised, her voice bright with certainty. The subscription box business lasted exactly 2 months before quietly disappearing from her social media. When I asked about repayment, Amanda always had an excuse. The market wasn't ready. Her supplier fell through. She was focusing on a new opportunity. Eventually, she stopped responding to my texts about the money altogether. My parents, when I finally mentioned it to them, shrugged it off. "She's finding her way," my mother said, stirring her tea. "You're established in your career. You can afford to help your sister." My father nodded in agreement. "Blood is thicker than water. Jessica." What they really meant was, Amanda's dreams matter more than your financial stability. Then came the 4th of July barbecue in 2023. My parents hosted at their suburban home outside Boston, inviting extended family and neighbors. I'd flown in for the weekend, spending money I didn't have on a last-minute flight because my mother insisted it wouldn't be the same without me. Amanda and Chad arrived 2 hours late in his gleaming Audi, making a grand entrance. Amanda was wearing designer sunglasses and carrying a bag I recognized from a luxury brand's latest collection. My $10,000 had clearly gone somewhere, just not to repaying me. During dinner, Amanda regaled everyone with stories of her latest venture, a wellness podcast that was about to be picked up by a major platform. When I asked reasonable questions about her business model, the table fell silent. "You're so sensitive. Jess, can't you take a joke?" Amanda laughed, breaking the tension. "Not everything needs a spreadsheet and 5-year plan." Everyone chuckled, and I became the villain, the jealous older sister trying to rain on Amanda's parade. I spent the rest of the evening helping my mother clean up while Amanda showed relatives her latest Instagram posts. That night, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. "Jessica needs to lighten up," my mother said. "She's always been so intense." "She's lonely," my father replied. "No husband, no kids, just that job in Seattle. No wonder she's bitter." I stood frozen in the hallway, their words cutting deeper than any knife. I'd moved to Seattle for a promotion. I'd chosen career growth over proximity to family. These weren't failures. They were choices I'd made. Good choices for me. But in the Turner family narrative, I was the disappointment, the daughter who hadn't fulfilled her proper role. The final straw came just 3 weeks ago. A family group chat message from my mother. "Christmas at Grandma's as usual. Amanda and Chad will handle the catering this year." When I asked about flight arrangements, my parents usually booked family tickets together to get a group rate. The chat went silent for hours. Finally, my father responded, "We assumed you'd be too busy with work to join us this year." "We never said you couldn't come home for Christmas," my mother added quickly. "But we know how important your career is to you." The subtext was clear. You're not really wanted. I spent that evening staring at my laptop, looking at flight prices that had tripled since I'd last checked. I could have charged it to my credit card. I could have shown up anyway. But something inside me finally snapped. For years, I'd been the family ATM, the emotional support, the reliable daughter who would always be there no matter how they treated me. And for what? To be excluded from family celebrations? To be mocked for my responsible choices? I decided not to respond to the group chat. Instead, I made plans to spend Christmas in Seattle, volunteering at a local shelter and having dinner with a few colleagues who were also staying in town. It hurt, but it also felt like the first healthy decision I'd made regarding my family in years. Then the invoice arrived. As I stared at the $25,000 demand letter, memories flooded back. Grandma's will being read last year after she passed. Her estate divided among her children and grandchildren. I remembered my inheritance. A modest sum compared to what my cousins received, but still significant. My parents had insisted on managing it for me, claiming it made sense for tax purposes since they handled the family finances. I'd never seen a penny of that money, and now, somehow, it had been used as a down payment for Amanda's new car. With shaking hands, I dialed my mother's number. "Hello? Jessica," she answered, her voice cool and formal, as if speaking to a distant acquaintance. "Mom, I just received a bill for $25,000 for Amanda's car. There must be some mistake." A pause. I could hear Christmas music playing in the background, the familiar melody of Silent Night, creating a surreal soundtrack to this conversation. "There's no mistake," she said finally. "We discussed this at the reading of the will. Your portion of the inheritance was smaller, and you agreed the funds would be used for family needs." "I never agreed to buy Amanda a BM. "Don't be dramatic. It's not just for Amanda. It's a family vehicle. And frankly, Jessica, given your history of financial instability, we felt it was best to make decisions that benefit everyone." "Financial instability? Mom, I've never missed a bill payment in my life." "Well, there was that credit card issue in college, and you're always complaining about money. Besides, Amanda and Chad need a reliable vehicle now that they're thinking about starting a family." My head spun. The credit card issue had been a fraudulent charge I'd successfully disputed 12 years ago, and Amanda and Chad had been thinking about starting a family for 5 years with no action. "This isn't right. Grandmas will never intended this, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Mr. Whitfield agrees with our interpretation, my mother replied, referring to the family lawyer who'd always seemed more like my parents' personal attorney than an objective executor. The paperwork has been filed. The payment is due January 15th. She hung up before I could respond. I sat in stunned silence, rain pattering against my window as darkness fell over Seattle. I'd been used, manipulated, and now robbed, and they expected me to just accept it. Not this time. What my family didn't know, what I'd carefully kept from them for years, was that I wasn't the financial disaster they believed me to be. Yes, my marketing job at Pinnacle paid well, but nothing extraordinary. What they didn't know about was Evergreen Financial Services, my side hustle that had grown from a weekend project into a thriving business. 3 years ago, I'd started helping small businesses with their financial strategies. It began with a friend's startup, creating budgets and forecasts in exchange for a small equity stake. Word spread, and soon I was managing investments and providing financial consulting for a dozen clients. By the end of 2023, Evergreen was managing assets worth over $750,000, generating substantial income that I reinvested rather than flaunted. I'd also developed a social media analytics tool that helped companies target their marketing efforts more effectively. In April 2024, I'd licensed the algorithm to a major tech firm, resulting in a royalty payment of $125,000. The money sat in a high-yield account, untouched. My parents believed I was living paycheck to paycheck in my tiny Seattle apartment. In reality, I'd chosen the modest studio because it was walking distance to my office and allowed me to save aggressively. I'd paid off my student loans 2 years ago but continued to mention them in family conversations to maintain the illusion of financial struggle. Why the secrecy? At first, it was simple caution. I wanted to be sure my ventures would succeed before discussing them. But as time passed and I observed how my family treated me versus Amanda, I realized something important. They needed me to be the struggling daughter. My success threatened the family dynamic they'd created. If they knew I was financially independent, they couldn't control me through money. They couldn't feel superior by helping me. They couldn't justify giving Amanda preferential treatment because Jessica doesn't need it. So I kept my success to myself, watching and waiting. Now, I was glad I had. The day after receiving the invoice, I called in sick to work and spent hours gathering evidence. Bank statements showing the transfers from my grandmother's estate, screenshots of text messages and family group chats, emails between my parents and Mr. Whitfield that I'd been copied on but had ignored, assuming they were routine estate matters. Reading them now, I was shocked by the deliberate manipulation. They had systematically diverted my inheritance, using technical legal language to obscure what was happening. Without specialized knowledge, I might never have understood what they were doing. Fortunately, financial analysis was now my specialty. On December 22nd, I met with Sophia Morrison of Morrison & Associates, bringing my carefully organized evidence. As she reviewed the documents, her expression grew increasingly troubled. "This is concerning," she said finally, removing her reading glasses. "They've essentially misappropriated your inheritance under the guise of family financial management. The good news is, you have solid documentation. The bad news is, legal battles with family are never simple." "I don't want to just sue them," I explained. "I want them to understand what they've done. I want accountability." Sophia nodded thoughtfully. "Tell me about your sister's husband, Chad, is it?" "Yes, Chad Whitman. He's an investment banker at Cascade Financial Services, always talking about his connections and deal-making skills." "And they're having some kind of event soon?" I pulled up Amanda's Instagram on my phone. A launch party for her newest venture, a lifestyle brand called Authentic Living by Amanda. January 5th at the Grand Windsor in Chicago. She's been planning it for months. A slow smile spread across Sophia's face. That might give us the perfect opportunity. We spent the next 2 hours crafting a strategy that was equal parts legal maneuver and public revelation. It would be risky. It would be dramatic. And if it worked, It would change everything. Christmas Day came and went. I spent it serving meals at Hope Harbor Shelter, surrounded by people who had far less than I did, but showed more genuine warmth than my family had in years. I received no calls or texts from my parents or Amanda, just a generic Happy Holidays email that had clearly been sent to everyone in my mother's contact list. As December turned to January, I finalized my preparations. I purchased a plane ticket to Chicago. I bought a dress, a sleek black number that cost more than I'd ever spent on clothing before. I rehearsed what I would say, practiced maintaining my composure. Sophia and I met again on January 3rd to review our strategy. "Are you sure you want to do it this way?" she asked. "We could handle this more privately." "They've hidden behind privacy for years," I replied. "That ends now." On January 5th, I checked into a hotel 2 blocks from the Grand Windsor. The Chicago winter was bitter, the temperature hovering around 20 degrees as snow fell in thick flakes. I spent the afternoon preparing, having my hair and makeup done professionally, reviewing my documentation one final time, loading everything onto a secure USB drive. At 7:45 p.m., I stepped out of my Uber and walked into the Grand Windsor's ornate lobby. Crystal chandeliers hung from coffered ceilings. Marble floors gleamed beneath my heels. I followed signs to the Crystal Ballroom, where Amanda's launch party was already underway. I paused at the entrance, taking in the scene. At least 100 people filled the space, dressed in cocktail attire and sipping champagne. A stage had been set up at the far end, featuring a large screen currently displaying the Authentic Living by Amanda logo, a stylized A surrounded by a wreath of laurels. Near the stage stood my sister, radiant in a champagne-colored gown, her blonde hair arranged in elegant waves. Chad hovered beside her, his arm possessively around her waist as they chatted with guests. My parents were there too, my father distinguished in a tuxedo, my mother elegant in blue silk. They looked like the perfect family, the family they wanted everyone to believe they were. I took a deep breath and stepped into the room. At first, no one noticed me. I moved through the crowd, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing server, nodding politely to strangers who assumed I belonged there. I made my way toward the tech booth at the side of the stage, where a young man in black was managing the audio-visual equipment. "Excuse me," I said, showing him the USB drive. "I have Amanda's presentation. There was a last-minute update." He hesitated. "I wasn't told about any changes." I smiled confidently. "It just came in. You know how these things go. Always adjustments until the last minute. Amanda will be very upset if the wrong version plays." Name-dropping the host and implying potential displeasure worked its magic. He took the drive, plugged it in, and quickly reviewed the files. "Looks good. I'll cue it up for when she's ready to present." "Perfect. Thank you." I moved away, positioning myself near the back of the room with a clear view of both the stage and my family. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat, but outwardly, I remained calm. At 8:30 p.m., Chad clinked a knife against his glass, calling for attention. The room gradually quieted as he took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming tonight to support my incredible wife as she launches Authentic Living by Amanda." He paused for applause. Amanda has always been a visionary, someone who sees possibilities where others see obstacles, and she's been fortunate to have the unwavering support of family who believe in her dreams. He gestured to my parents, who stood beaming at a front table. Robert and Linda Turner, everyone, the most generous parents anyone could ask for. More applause. My mother pretended to be embarrassed by the attention, while my father nodded graciously. "And now," Chad continued, "I'm thrilled to introduce the woman who's about to revolutionize how we think about authentic living, my wife, Amanda Turner." Amanda took the stage amid enthusiastic applause, her smile dazzling under the spotlights. "Thank you all so much for being here tonight," she began. "Authentic living isn't just a brand. It's a movement. It's about being true to yourself, honoring your values, and creating meaningful connections." The irony was almost too much to bear. "Family has always been my greatest inspiration," Amanda continued. The unconditional love and support I've received throughout my journey has made all of this possible. She gestured to the screen behind her. I'd like to share a short presentation about the values that drive authentic living. The tech operator pressed a button, and the screen changed, but not to Amanda's carefully curated brand video. Instead, it displayed a bank statement showing a transfer of $25,000 from Turner Family Trust, J. Turner Allocation, to BMW Financial Services. Amanda faltered, confusion crossing her face. Before she could speak, the screen changed again, showing a text message exchange between my mother and father. Mom, Jessica won't suspect anything if we move the money now, Dad. What if she asks about her inheritance? Mom, she never pays attention to financial details. Tell her the market was down. Besides, Amanda needs this car more than Jessica needs that money. Gasps rippled through the audience. Amanda spun around, staring at the screen in horror as it continued to cycle through evidence, emails discussing how to divert my inheritance, legal documents with sections highlighted, showing my name crossed out and Amanda's inserted, a formal letter from Whitfield Legal Group confirming the reallocation of assets. What is this? Amanda's voice cracked as she turned to Chad, who was frantically signaling to the tech booth. I stepped forward then, moving through the now murmuring crowd. It's the truth, Amanda, I said, my voice carrying in the suddenly quiet room. It's what authentic living actually looks like in our family. My parents spotted me then, my mother's perfectly made-up face draining of color, my father's expression hardening into anger. Jessica, he said, stepping forward, what do you think you're doing? Showing everyone exactly who you are, I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. You stole my inheritance to buy Amanda a car, then sent me an invoice demanding I pay for it. You excluded me from family gatherings. You've manipulated and gaslit me for years, and I'm done. The screen behind Amanda now showed the invoice I'd received, the $25,000 demand in black and white for everyone to see. This is private family business, my mother stammered, looking around at the confused and curious faces of Amanda's guests. This is completely inappropriate. Inappropriate? I laughed, though there was no humor in it. Was it appropriate to steal from your daughter? To lie to her for years? To treat her like an ATM while pretending she's a financial disaster? Chad had reached the tech booth and was arguing with the operator, who seemed uncertain what to do. On stage, Amanda stood frozen, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. You've always needed me to be the failure, I continued, addressing my family but aware of the room full of witnesses. You needed someone to feel superior to, someone to manipulate, someone to use, but I'm not that person anymore. My father advanced toward me, his face contorted with rage. You will stop this right now. You're making a scene and embarrassing your sister on her big night. No, Dad, you've embarrassed yourselves. The screen changed again, now showing my business records, Evergreen Financial Services growth charts, client testimonials, the patent royalty deposit, then my bank statement showing my paid-off student loans, my excellent credit score, my carefully managed investments. I'm not the financial disaster you've pretended I am, I said. I've built a successful business. I've paid off my debts. I've created something real, not by exploiting others, but through hard work and integrity. A woman I didn't recognize stood up from a table near the front. Amanda, is this true? Did your family steal from your sister to buy you a car? Amanda opened her mouth, closed it, then burst into tears and ran from the stage. Chad abandoned the tech booth and rushed after her. My mother approached me, her voice low and threatening. You've ruined everything. I hope you're satisfied. This isn't about satisfaction, Mom. It's about consequences. Sweetheart, my father said, his tone suddenly conciliatory as he became aware of the watching crowd. Let's handle this quietly. We can work something out. Like you worked out stealing my inheritance? No thanks. An older woman approached. My mother's sister, Aunt Margaret. I'd always liked her. though we rarely saw each other. "Linda, Robert," she said, her voice tight with anger. "I always knew you favored Amanda, but this is criminal." "Margaret, please," my mother hissed. "Not now." "Yes, now," Aunt Margaret replied. "Finally, the truth." Other relatives were watching, whispering among themselves. Friends of Amanda and Chad looked uncomfortable, some already making discreet exits. Mr. Whitfield appeared, his legal demeanor in place despite the chaos. "Miss Turner, this display is potentially libelous. I suggest you cease immediately." "Libelous?" I smiled coldly. "Truth is an absolute defense against libel, Mr. Whitfield, and I have documented every transaction, every conversation, every lie. If you'd like to discuss this further, my attorney will be happy to meet with you." I handed him Sophia Morrison's business card. "She's expecting your call." The room had thinned considerably, Amanda's perfect launch party disintegrating around us. Chad returned, his face flushed with anger. "You've destroyed her, Jessica. Are you happy now? She's locked herself in the bathroom, hysterical." "I didn't destroy anything, Chad. You and my parents did that when you decided to steal from me." "It wasn't stealing. It was a family decision about how to allocate resources." A family decision that conveniently excluded the family member being stolen from. My father put his hand on Chad's shoulder. "Son, not here. We'll handle this." I looked at them, my father with his manufactured dignity, my mother with her cold fury, Chad with his entitlement, the family that had used and discarded me for years. "There's nothing left to handle," I said. "I've filed a lawsuit for the return of my inheritance plus damages for defamation and emotional distress. Sophia will be in touch with specifics." "You're suing your own family?" My mother's voice rose in disbelief. "You stopped being family when you started being thieves." I turned and walked away, conscious of the stares following me. At the ballroom entrance, I paused and looked back. The remnants of Amanda's launch party stood in awkward clusters, the celebratory atmosphere completely evaporated. For a moment, I felt a twinge of regret, not for exposing the truth, but for the family I'd never really had, the loving, supportive family I'd pretended existed despite all evidence to the contrary. Then I straightened my shoulders and walked out into the snowy Chicago night, leaving the ruins of my family's facade behind me. The aftermath was both swift and chaotic. Within hours, clips from Amanda's launch party were circulating on social media. Someone had recorded my confrontation on their phone, and despite efforts to have it removed, the video kept reappearing on different platforms. Authentic living became a trending hashtag, though not in the way Amanda had intended. My phone exploded with notifications, texts from distant relatives, former classmates, colleagues. Some expressed shock, others support, a few criticism for airing dirty laundry. I silenced all notifications and spent the night in my hotel room, strangely calm after the storm I'd unleashed. The next morning, I met with Sophia to discuss next steps. She'd already received calls from 3 different attorneys, one representing my parents, one for Amanda and Chad, and one from Mr. Whitfield himself. "They're scrambling," she said, looking pleased. "Your father is offering to return the $25,000 immediately if you'll withdraw any legal action and sign an NDA. "Not enough," I replied. "I want the full inheritance, plus compensation for the emotional distress." That's what I told them. They're considering options. Over the next few weeks, legal documents flew back and forth. My parents initially tried to claim I'd misunderstood the family financial arrangements. When that failed, they attempted to paint me as unstable and vindictive. Finally, facing mounting evidence and the public relations disaster already unfolding, they agreed to a settlement. The terms were comprehensive: full restoration of my inheritance, which turned out to be significantly more than they'd admitted to, additional compensation for emotional distress, and a formal acknowledgement of wrongdoing. I refused to sign an NDA. The truth would not be buried again. On social media, Amanda's carefully crafted image imploded. Her authentic living brand became a punchline. She lost nearly 30,000 followers in the first week after the incident. Sponsors pulled out of partnerships. Her lifestyle blog went dark. My father called me directly in late January, his voice lacking its usual authority. "Jessica, this has gone far enough. Your mother is heartbroken. Amanda can barely leave the house. You've made your point." "This isn't about making a point, Dad. It's about justice. We made a mistake. We admit that. But destroying your sister's career, your mother's reputation, I didn't destroy anything. I simply revealed what was already there." He sighed heavily. "Your mother and I, we're having problems. Serious problems. She blames me for not handling this better. I blame her for the idea in the first place. We're talking about separation." I felt a twinge of something, not quite sadness, not quite satisfaction. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you? Really?" "Yes. Despite everything, I never wanted to see my family fall apart. I just wanted the truth acknowledged." There was a long pause. "I don't think I ever really knew you, Jessica." "No, Dad, you never tried to—" After we hung up, I sat in my Seattle apartment, the same modest space that had witnessed my despair just weeks earlier, and felt the weight of generations of family dysfunction pressing down on me. The Turner family had always presented a perfect facade to the world while hiding rot at its core. I'd finally exposed that rot, but the cost had been high. By mid-February, the legal matters were mostly resolved. My inheritance had been restored, with interest. The additional compensation would allow me to expand Evergreen Financial Services significantly if I chose to. My parents had indeed separated, living in different states while they reassessed their relationship. Mr. Whitfield was facing an ethics investigation from the State Bar Association. Amanda surprised me by reaching out directly, requesting a meeting without Chad or our parents present. We met at a quiet cafe in Seattle, her arriving direct from the airport looking nothing like her Instagram persona. No designer clothes, minimal makeup, dark circles under her eyes. "I didn't know," she said after we'd ordered coffee, "about the inheritance, the car payments. I swear, Jessica, I didn't know they were using your money." I studied her face, looking for the manipulation I'd grown so accustomed to detecting, but all I saw was exhaustion and what appeared to be genuine remorse. "Chad said his bonus would cover the down payment," she continued. "Mom and Dad said they were helping with the rest as a gift. I never saw the paperwork. I never questioned it." "That's been your problem all along, Amanda. You never question where the money comes from, as long as you get what you want." She flinched but didn't argue. "You're right. I've been irresponsible, entitled. I just always assumed everything would work out. Because it always did at my expense." "Yes." She stared into her coffee. "I lost everything. You know, the brand, the sponsors, most of my followers, even my friends. Turns out they were only interested in what I could do for their own social media presence." "I'm sorry for that part," I said, and meant it. "I never wanted to destroy your life. I just wanted accountability." "I know, and I deserved it." She looked up, her eyes swimming with tears. "Chad and I are getting divorced." This genuinely surprised me. What happened? After everything fell apart, he changed, became angry, controlling, said I'd embarrassed him in front of his colleagues, damaged his professional reputation. When the sponsorships disappeared and I couldn't contribute financially anymore, he said I was a liability. I felt a surge of protective instinct I hadn't experienced toward my sister in years. "That's terrible, Amanda." "It's what I deserved," she repeated. "I've been living in this fantasy world where everything was about image and status. I never built anything real." We sat in silence for a moment, the cafe bustling around us. Strangers living their lives unaware of the seismic shifts in ours. "What will you do now?" I finally asked. "I'm starting over. I got a job at a boutique in Boulder. Nothing glamorous, just retail sales. I'm staying with a cousin until I can afford my own place." She gave a sad laugh. "I've never paid my own rent before. Can you believe that? I'm 29 years old." "It's never too late to learn," I said. softening despite my resolution to maintain emotional boundaries. "That's what I'm hoping," she hesitated, then reached across the table, not quite touching my hand, but bridging some of the distance between us. "Jessica, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I am truly sorry for everything. Not just the money, but the years of treating you like you didn't matter." I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Behind the designer clothes and perfect makeup, she'd always been insecure, constantly seeking validation. Our parents had weaponized that insecurity, using Amanda's need for approval to maintain control over both of us in different ways. "I believe you're sorry," I said carefully, "but trust has to be earned back. It won't happen overnight." "I know. I'm willing to try. If you are, no pressure, no expectations, just a chance." I didn't commit to anything that day. We finished our coffee, exchanged tentative goodbyes, and went our separate ways. But something had shifted. A tiny opening in a door I'd thought permanently closed. March brought new developments. Evergreen Financial Services continued to grow, now managing over $2 million in assets. I hired 2 associates and moved the business into proper offices in downtown Seattle. My marketing job at Pinnacle became part-time, then a consultancy arrangement, as I transitioned to running my own company full-time. I also decided to move. My studio apartment, while practical, held too many memories of difficult times. I found a modern townhouse near Lake Union with enough space for a proper home office and guest room. As I packed up my old place, I came across photographs of family Christmases past, birthday celebrations, graduations, moments where we'd appeared happy, united. I set them aside, neither displaying them in my new home nor throwing them away. They represented a chapter closed but not forgotten. April arrived with unexpected news from Aunt Margaret. She'd taken over managing my grandmother's estate after Mr. Whitfield's removal and had discovered additional assets that had been concealed from all beneficiaries. "Your parents knew about these investments," she told me over the phone. "They kept them off the books during probate. It affects everyone's inheritance, not just yours." More family secrets, more deception. I wasn't even surprised anymore. With Aunt Margaret's help, the estate was properly settled, benefiting not just me but cousins and other relatives who'd been similarly shortchanged. This created new alliances within the extended family, connections based on honesty rather than facade. In May, I received an unexpected invitation to a family gathering, not from my parents, but from Aunt Margaret and several cousins, a reunion of sorts for the parts of the family who wanted to rebuild on healthier terms. I attended cautiously and was surprised to find genuine warmth and support. Amanda was there too, quieter than I'd ever seen her, helping in the kitchen rather than holding court in the living room. We spoke briefly, awkwardly, but without hostility. She'd lost weight, dressed simply, wore minimal makeup. The Instagram influencer persona had been completely abandoned. "I'm taking classes," she told me while we washed dishes side by side. "Accounting. Can you believe it?" I raised an eyebrow. "Seriously?" "I want to understand money. Really understand it, how it works, how to manage it responsibly." She scrubbed a pot with unnecessary vigor. "I never want to be financially ignorant again." I handed her a towel. "That's actually impressive, Amanda." She smiled tentatively. "I have a good role model." I didn't acknowledge the compliment directly, but something warm settled in my chest. Summer brought an unexpected development. At a financial technology conference in Denver, I met Luke Harrison, the founder of a sustainable investment platform. We connected over shared values and complementary business models. What began as professional networking evolved into something more personal. Luke was different from anyone I'd dated before. Straightforward, genuinely kind, with no hidden agendas. He listened when I shared my family history, offering support without judgment. "Families are complicated," he said one evening as we walked along the waterfront. "Mine included. The question is whether you let those complications define you or motivate you." "Both, I think," I replied. I wouldn't have pushed myself so hard without trying to prove something to my parents, but I also wouldn't have accepted such poor treatment for so long. He took my hand. You know what I see? Someone who finally decided her own worth wasn't negotiable. That's rare and valuable. As summer turned to fall, Luke and I grew closer. His company expanded to Seattle, giving us more time together. We weren't rushing anything, both valuing independence too much for that, but we were building something authentic, a word I'd reclaimed from Amanda's failed brand and given real meaning. My parents remained separated, though not yet divorced. My father had reached out several times, attempting reconciliation in his way. Awkward phone calls, formal emails. My mother maintained more distance, sending occasional messages through intermediaries, but never contacting me directly. Amanda continued her accounting classes, working retail to support herself. She called once a month, our conversations gradually becoming less strained. She'd started seeing a therapist, working through the damage our upbringing had caused. I found myself cautiously rooting for her recovery. In September, I expanded Evergreen to include a foundation focused on financial literacy for young women. The first program launched in partnership with Seattle Public Schools, teaching high school girls about investing, saving, and building financial independence. Standing before the inaugural class, I shared parts of my story, not the family drama, but the importance of financial self-reliance. Knowledge is power, I told them, especially when it comes to your money. Never let anyone convince you that you can't or shouldn't understand your own finances. Watching their eager faces, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, a sense of having created something meaningful, something that would outlast any family conflict or personal vindication. That evening, I received a text from Amanda. Saw the news about your foundation. It's incredible. Jess, those girls are lucky to have you. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Thank you. That means a lot. It was a small exchange, but it felt like another step toward whatever new relationship might be possible between us. Not the blind trust of before, but something more conscious, more deliberate. As October arrived with its characteristic Seattle rain, I found myself reflecting on the previous year's journey, from that moment of despair in my apartment, staring at a $25,000 invoice, to running a successful company and foundation, developing a healthy relationship, creating boundaries with toxic family members while nurturing connections with supportive ones. The revenge I'd sought had transformed into something else entirely, not just accountability for those who had wronged me, but liberation for myself. I'd broken free from patterns established in childhood, from expectations that had never served me, from the role of family scapegoat and ATM. The invoice that had once seemed like the ultimate betrayal had actually been a gift, the final push I needed to stand up for myself, to claim my worth, to demand better. One rainy evening, as Luke and I cooked dinner in my townhouse kitchen, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Jessica Turner, I said, balancing the phone between ear and shoulder while chopping vegetables. Ms. Turner, this is Eliza Whitfield. I set down the knife. Mr. Whitfield's daughter? Yes. Her voice was tight, professional. I've taken over my father's practice following his retirement. I'm calling about your parents. Mr. Whitfield's retirement had been forced after the ethics investigation revealed multiple instances of professional misconduct. I hadn't followed the case closely, having moved on to more positive endeavors. What about my parents? I asked cautiously. They've asked me to contact you regarding a Christmas gathering at your grandmother's house. They'd like you to attend. I laughed despite myself. Seriously? After everything? They understand it's a significant request. They've authorized me to tell you that they're prepared to make formal amends, publicly if necessary. I glanced at Luke, who was pretending not to eavesdrop while stirring pasta sauce. Tell them I'll consider it, I said finally, but I have conditions. They expected as much. Should I arrange a meeting? No, I'll email you my terms directly. After hanging up, I explained the conversation to Luke, who listened with his usual thoughtfulness. "What are you thinking?" he asked when I finished. "I'm thinking that a year ago, I would have jumped at any chance for family reconciliation, no matter how toxic the circumstances. Now, I don't need their approval anymore.
But
But closure might be nice, on my terms, not theirs."
he smiled. Then set your terms.
That night, I drafted an email to Eliza Whitfield outlining my conditions: a formal acknowledgement of the financial misconduct, family therapy sessions before any reunion, and a clear understanding that any future relationship would be based on mutual respect, not obligation. I had no idea if my parents would agree. Part of me didn't care either way. I had built a life I was proud of, surrounded myself with people who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. I had reclaimed my power. The Christmas invoice had been meant to control me, to extract one final payment from the daughter they'd always undervalued. Instead, it had freed me to discover my true worth, a value that could never be invoiced, only claimed. As I pressed send on the email, I felt the last pieces of old resentment dissolve. Whatever happened next, whether reconciliation or permanent separation, the decision would be mine, made from strength, not weakness, from choice, not obligation. The invoice had been paid in full, not with money, but with truth, and that was a currency no one could ever take from me again.